Vertical flexion. Where was I? I was talking about position. Okay, this is the reason we're having so much trouble with our horses' heads being so high is because we're using 80% of our communication with our hands. Okay, meaning that we're not using our legs or our seat, we're just using our hands. Where our stops, we're pulling and yanking, and if we're wanting to go, we're pulling and snatching and getting our horse to go or back up. We've got to change that. We've got to change it to where it's only 10% communication with our hands, meaning from our hands to the bit, and 80 or 90% in our legs and our seat. Okay? All right, so the purpose of vertical flexion is, well, let me back up. Because we're always applying pressure with our hands in the horse's mouth and applying so much pressure on his tongue, what's happening is the horse is searching for a release. In his release, he's finding it up here. Okay? Now, when the horse's head is high all the time, then he's going to be tight all through his body. And that gets him out of balance. His alignment is off. Okay? Y'all follow me on that? So, the other thing is that when we're yanking on our horses to pull them to stop, the head comes up, and where do we usually release? We release when the head's up. So the horse thinks now that this is where the release is, and he should have his head up all the time. Now you'll see a lot of horses running around that's hard to control with a high head, and that's fear. That's a lot of fear in that horse. And that fear is probably coming from a lot of pain in the horse's mouth. So this is the reason why we want vertical flexion. So vertical flexion, when I apply pressure to the horse's mouth, he's gonna release here at the pole. Okay, right here. You know, we've done some vertical flexion on the ground and at different times, and that's the reason why, because we're preparing him for this right here, in the saddle. Now Digger knows this pretty good, but we'll have another horse here in a few days that doesn't know how to give vertical flexion, and we'll do a Facebook Live with him too. Okay, so what happens is when the head starts coming down, he's going to get softer, not only physically but mentally. His back is going to round off, which is going to position his hind legs underneath him, which is going to give us the balance that we need in our horse. When we're able to have good balance in our horse, then we're going to be able to, instead of me, when I get him, there's a lot going on here. Digger's trying to watch it all. Okay, see, when I can get my horse vertical, now I can use my legs for the backup or my seat. Okay, see, I don't have to pull on him. All I'm going to do is get him in what we call also our vertical. I didn't ask for backup. Our vertical is actually a natural headset. See right here, I'm not asking for a backup. So I'm going to just kind of bump him here. I'll show you how to do this here in just a second. Okay, now I'm going to sit back in my seat, tap, just barely touch him with my legs, and you can see I'm not pulling on him with my hands. Now, when I go to a neutral position, I'm going to wait till he drops his nose and he's loose there, and I'll release. Okay, that's the purpose of getting our horse vertically or collected or a natural headset. That's what we want. You see, if I can, there's a lot going on here, and Digger's paying more attention to everybody else. You know, if I want a side pass, now I'm doing this with my left leg. See, I can move him without having to pull on it. Just using my leg. And the head keeps going up. I'm just bumping him. I'll take my leg off, and then I release when he drops his nose. Okay? So, collection is extremely important. One other thing about it is that if you're riding a high-headed horse all the time, and what's happened is he's carrying 60 or 70% of his weight on the front end. So there's lots of weight on these legs and these ankles and these joints on this front end. He's pulling from the front end. He's stopping on the front end. If your horse stops and you almost go over the saddle when he stops, that means he's stopping on the front end. We want their departure to be off the hind end, off his hind legs, and we want him stopping on his hind legs. Okay? All right. Has Vicky been on there? You haven't seen her? Okay, hey guys. So anyway, let's get to this. Now, teaching our horse to give vertically. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask with my right rein, and what I'm going to do is just bump and release. Bump and release, okay? Now, he kind of done it on his own there. Release, bump, bump, release, bump, release. Just like that, okay? Yeah, Digger knows this, but let's say that you apply pressure to the tongue, like this here, and the head goes up. What's happening is when the head goes up, what you do is you just hold what you've got. You just hold it. Don't increase the pressure. Don't try to pull his head down. Just hold what you've got. And he may go to the right. He may throw his head to the left in different directions. But you just hold it, and sometimes it may take a minute or so. And you just hang on and hold it, and as soon as he lowers his nose, and you release right then. Okay? And then go back and do it again. Now this time, what I'm doing is the right rein. I'm just bumping, releasing. Now, Digger should already be releasing, but I'm having to apply a little more pressure. Bump, release, bump, release, bump, release, bump, release. He dropped his nose there. The first time I didn't release it because he was still pushing on the bit, meaning he was leaning on the bit. Okay? All right, then I'll do the other side. Now this rein here, I've got a little bit snub because I want to control this side of the head. I don't want him turning his head like he is now when I'm asking for collection, okay? Or vertical flexion. There, bump, release, bump, release, bump, release. I just keep bumping and releasing. There he goes, good. And then I'll release, all right? Okay. Now I'm bumping and releasing with one rein at a time. There's, some guys teach it where you can, what they call a seesaw, and that works too. It's just if you're not good with your hands, if you're just learning this, I wouldn't do the seesaw, because what I'm doing here is I'm just moving my hands from the right and left at my wrist, just using my wrist. But when we don't really understand it, what we're going to do is we're going to use, a lot of you will use your arms and shoulders, and that's pretty rough on the horse's tongue. And and you don't want him to hate that pressure that he's feeling. So you'll want to just get up here, because this works really good. I've done it thousands of times with thousands of horses. Just sit here and bump, release, bump, release, bump, release, bump, release. And just keep doing that until he gives. There we go. Okay. All right. Now, when you know that your horse is really understanding this, is when you can walk up and when you get on your horse and you reach down and you grab your reins and he drops his head. All right? It doesn't take long. All you got to do, and you don't have to get up here and just bam, 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 just keep yanking and pulling or bumping him really hard. A horse can feel a fly on his back. If he can feel that fly on his back, then he's definitely feeling the bit on his tongue. See, I'm just using very little pressure here. Very little pressure. And I'm just going to keep doing it. I'll just keep doing it there. And he releases. Okay?
Brian,
all right.
Louisiana's on here.
Who?
Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Zachary, Louisiana.
Zachary, Louisiana. Okay. Now in a walk, same thing. When I ask my horse to go forward, as we're going, now it's really important that when you're going forward that you've got to be using your seat. You should be using your seat anyway. And so I'm in a neutral position. I'm in a number 2 position with my seat. And I'm kind of sitting back in the pocket. And I'm using my pelvis to tell my horse to go forward. Now, when I start applying pressure, right there, he yielded for me. Some of your horses are going to feel that pressure, and they're going to want to slow down. So that's when you've really got to use this energy in your seat to keep your horse going forward. You got to push him on through it. So as we're walking down through here, to get my collection, I'm just going to bump, release, bump, release, bump, release, bump, release. There. And as soon as your horse drops his nose, then you release. Okay? Yeah. Okay. All right. Now you do this. Just throw it down. When you get it in the walk, when your horse becomes really comfortable with it in the walk, then you go to the trot. And then you go, once you gets really comfortable in the trot,